Oh, my mic. I'll redo it. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the West Bend Community Memorial Library Board for Tuesday, November 17th. Now we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I'd like to ask for an approval of the agenda, please. Thank you, Joanne. May I have a second?
I'll second.
We have an approval and a second of the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to call for an approval of the consent agenda for the approval of the minutes from the October 20th meeting and also approval of the library expenditures for October 2020.
So move.
We have a motion. We have a second, Doug and Joseph. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will take a look at the financial reports for October. I guess I would like to make one statement. Last month, there was a little confusion on the issue of what was being put into the capital offset. That actually is the 2019-2020 payment from the county for us for our capital. Okay, I know there was a little bit of misunderstanding because I even talked to Carrie and we had a misunderstanding, Carrie and I. One thing I want to bring up, we don't have to do it tonight, but this money is listed in the cash investments. Technically, it's a restricted fund, so we really should have that moved into a fund balance, so it doesn't appear as if it's actually operating money that is available to us for this year. We won't do it at this meeting. I'll move it to the next meeting, but I just wanted to make everybody aware of that. And to the best of my knowledge, I think this is the last capital payment that the county will be making. Anyways, in next year's budget, they had a change where they moved, they're not doing capital, they're putting it into expense, not the total 56. I guess we're getting 28,000 from them. So, okay, sorry, Joseph.
That's okay. Other than that, there's not really much to report. We had a small amount of interest and then the 2 checks for family fun night activities.
Does anybody have any questions? If not, we will move on. Oh, we had the fund balance report. That probably was why I had you put that on there, was in regards to the capital. I jumped the gun. That's okay. Any questions on that fund balance? If not, we'll move on. Public comment? Okay, normal public comment. Library Director's Report. Brad?
Okay, so the first thing you will see is this was one of Amy's charges before she left, was to give you guys a report on that whole business where they did the ad campaign at the Monarch level. I decided to put it here simply because it's part of statistics, and I have a little bit to say about statistics in general, that this is what they did with the billboards and all of that we saw over the last couple of months. And basically what it comes down to is online card registrations increased during this time frame, digital resource use increased, and of course physical item circulation decreased. So this is not a surprise considering the situation. One of the things I just would like to point out for the record is that in 2018, the West Bend Library did physical circulations in 2018, did 449,981. In 2019, which was the year before the COVID year, West Bend did 459,608 physical circs. This is the first time in my known memory, being here 10 years, where our total circulations went up over 2%. So we actually, right before the COVID strike, we were actually seeing a small rise in our total physical circulations. And also in that same breath, our non-served Circ rose between 18 and 19, 2.5%. So I think, and I think this is towards what you've been saying, Doug, all along, we see these numbers dropping in physical circulations. The point is, we were on the cusp of probably a good year in 2020. We'll never know. But I think this is promising that if the ship rewrites in 21, we may not see the fruits of the labor until 22. I don't know how 21 is going to go. But this is just a promising little snip of what I hope will be a general increase, maybe. We'll see. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out was that you'll notice you didn't have any Circs this month. Part of that is I'm still trying to get used to the way Amy did that. So her system and my system are a little bit different. And I'm making some, how should we say, audits of the information. I found a few items that were not quite correct. However, no circulation numbers have changed. That is still accurate. There are a couple other things, just little tweaks here, like a number missed there, that sort of thing. I am working to rewrite that going forward. And I hope to have this for you next month. Yes, sir.
Question. Not tonight, but for next time, could you do an analysis, and it shouldn't be very difficult, to see if the Circs were going up, what was happening to our card holders at that same time? Because I'm just wondering, could we have had card holders that were being more active, or were we getting more card holders? It's just curiosity.
Well, how are we going to figure that out? I'm trying to think of how I'm going to know the difference
I
between,
would just, just rough numbers. In other words, if the circulation was this much,
right?
and we had this many patrons,
Okay.
and then because that was one of the discussions about this library project from Monarch, was how do you measure, the success of your campaign? It's like any marketing tool. You think you know what it is, but you're not sure, and it's hard to measure it.
Well, those raw numbers will show up on your report, right? You have the total number of Circs, you have the breakdown of adult, young adult, and children's. You have the number of new users by month, and you'll have the total number of users by month. So that data will be right there. We could just, break down percentages if you want, I suppose. Is that what you're looking at?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
just to be clear, Doug, you want an analysis of the Circ numbers compared to patrons?
Just to see if our circulation is related to current card holders taking out more books, or if the circulation has increased because we've gotten more card holders. Because you haven't been flushing out card holders, or is that a continuing thing? I can't remember.
Every year.
Huh?
Every year we run a
Once a year.
purge. Yeah, we run a purge of records, yep.
Okay.
But in our statistics, it will show the September and October card holders, correct? That shows that on there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll show from June, July, August, September, if the card holders go up based on the campaign to get more card holders. Right?
In theory, yes.
Okay.
I mean, what I can tell you right now, between September and October, I have a little part of it here that I know is accurate. So in August, we added 104 new persons. In September, we added 110, and in October, we added 85. So we actually went down as far as new users.
We got them in September.
We got them in September.
Okay, any other questions for Brad on statistics or the Monarch issue? No? All right, we will move on to Brad. Director search update, please.
Sure. So as of right now, as of this morning, I have 20 applicants.
Good for you.
Yes, it is wonderful. We are the committee, what do we call ourselves, Tim? Director Search Committee, Subcommittee, something?
Brad,
Okay.
excuse me,
Yeah.
could you take your mask down just as you're talking, would you mind?
I would prefer not to,
Okay, then.
but I will talk louder.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Okay. So the committee met on the 9th of November, and we went through the applicants at that point of what we had, and we have decided to interview a number of them, and we're going to do it via Zoom on this Thursday and Friday, as the case may be. We've got time slots set up, and so we are going to be doing initial interviews with the first slew of candidates.
How many?
Is it 14, Tim? I think it's 14. Something like that, yeah.
Well, if you have,
14.
go ahead. then I'll-
Yeah, no, 14, I think that's the number. 6 have come in since our initial meeting, so they would be part of group 2. I mean, we had to chop it off somewhere, otherwise, it'd just be a rolling thing, so. And I've got them broken out, so I know which ones are which. So we will see what happens.
Well, I have a number of questions because, first of all, I was looking for some minutes from the October 14th meeting,
We didn't have anybody take minutes,
and there weren't any minutes. It says in there's a process. Haven't seen the process at all of how this is going to be done. Haven't seen who was going to do it.
Well, the process was the committee, Doug.
Yeah.
And that's the 2 people that were assigned plus the others. Then it's up to them. They were the ones who were going to set up the process that was going to be handled, and the rest of us have stepped back, leaving it up to them to skinny it down.
That's correct.
But a committee doesn't have that authority. They advise the board, and the board
They
makes the
will.
decision.
We just haven't gotten to that point yet.
I have a concern that, okay, who is on, well, it's not a committee because it isn't a committee. You're not issuing any minutes, so it's not a committee. Based according to our bylaws, it's not a committee because you're not issuing any minutes. Who makes it up? What people? There's 2 board members, right?
So it's going to be Tim and Karen and me. And then we have Hannah Kane, who is one of our employees. And then we have, I'm trying to think who was the 5th one.
Kimberly,
Oh, yeah, Kimberly Young from Monarch. And we had an addition of Jennifer Einwalter from Hartford. Those are the 6.
And how do you meet? Via Zoom?
We have met once via Zoom November 9.
Pardon me?
We met once via Zoom on November 9.
Okay. Well, I have a concern that this is going to be probably one of the major decisions that this board takes is to hire the new director, because we're seeing an awful lot of change going within libraries and the way libraries are moving forward. I guess I would like to see more representation of board members.
We can't.
can't.
We cannot, because if there's more than 2 board members, it becomes open meetings. It would push this process out to infinity,
Why?
because
We
you,
did that last time, and we went through the process. I'll hire Amy. At the time, we didn't have as many applicants, but we had those meetings set up that way, and they were public, and it added considerably to the amount of work that that was involved. I forgot what the push here. It added considerably to the amount of time it took, even though we had fewer applicants. And I guess that experience was expressly the reason and that we didn't want to do it that way again. And also that requirement to have those meetings public includes the extra time frame on the posting, and so the whole process drug out a very long time because of that.
Well, the meeting that you had on November 9th, could that not have been done with a posting also, because you knew about it sooner than 2 days?
I'm going to defer to you on this, Deb. Remember, I had asked you about that, and because of the situation, we did not have to post.
it does not have to post because
Correct.
we only have 2 board members, and that's the whole intent. That is why the committee was set up in that way. We talked about it, we agreed upon it at the meeting on the 14th. This is how it was going to be done. And that.
Well, the meeting on the 14th also had there is no written process. There's nothing written, there's no
The
minutes.
process is the committee, we've turned it over to the committee. That's how you do this. It's the same thing that,
Okay, can somebody just write out that process?
So Doug, what'll happen is this committee doesn't make a final selection.
Correct.
We're gonna bring back a slew of candidates, whatever we believe to be the finalists, more than likely in a closed session, because you can't have an open conversation about candidates at that point in time. And then we as a board have to do our own interviews, of which we've talked about an interview with the board, potentially, and we talked about this on the 14th, I think is the day we met. Sorry, losing dates here. And then the idea that, the staff at the library may do an interview at the same time, or there's a public meet and greet or something like that. All this committee is doing is taking us from 20 or 25 or wherever we ever end up down to 5, 6, whatever we feel is correct to bring forward to the board for the board to look at. The board can go through all 5, 6, 2, whatever we bring forward and say, we don't want any of these, go back to the drawing board.
Well, can the board look at all the resumes?
Doug, can I just say, I took a lot of notes at that meeting from the lady from Monarch. She gave us that handout. I didn't bring it with me tonight. That's a great guideline for our committee, or for me, who's not a library person, staff. And I'm trying to follow that. I'm sure Brad, that she presented, what's her name from Monarch?
Kimberly.
Kimberly.
That was the process.
It was
that
a
Monarch-
wonderful informational sheet, plus I took a lot of notes. So I think the committee, especially with all the lady from Hartford, I forget, what's her name in Hartford? Jennifer. She has great input, and so did Hannah. So I think you have to trust us to narrow it down, because you can't look at the application. I've read through them all. Some of these applications are,
Well, are you saying that I can't look at them?
I think for confidentiality, I'm not sure. It's something you'd have to talk to the city about. Because
I don't think that is a confidentiality. I think any of the board members has a right to
Yes.
look at these. So if anyone wants to look at the 20 candidates, but they would have to go to the library.
I'll contact, I'd like to see them all. I'll contact Brad, and you're the keeper of the records, right?
I am the keeper.
So You know, I'll make an appointment with Brad so I can take a look at them.
The only thing, Doug, that we did was we agreed to put our trust in the initial people to narrow it down.
Trusting them. All I'm saying is I would like to take a look at the applicants, just to get a flavor of what we have. Is that wrong?
No, not at all, but what happens if you disagree with their,
Pardon me?
what happens if you disagree with their decisions, and then you not being a part of that committee, say, why didn't we
But
look
I'm
at
a
this
board
person?
member.
But I don't think you can, right? Because it can only be 2 board members, which are Tim and Karen.
Doug,
You have the right to see the applicants, but you do not have a right to.
To input.
You know, you can maybe talk to Karen and say, I like this person, but that's it. I mean, it is up, we've turned this over to the committee like we would do on any other committee.
No,
and
because it isn't a committee. A committee has to
It
issue minutes.
is their committee. We authorize this committee. Now, they have had one meeting. If you want, this committee does not have to do minutes like a full, open meeting. And that's the reason why we went to the committee, to expedite.
It also gives the appearance that we're trying to hide something.
We aren't trying to hide anything. We aren't trying.
Doug,
Tim?
Doug, what are you conveying that we're trying to hide? If we do this as a board, we're doing it in closed session. We're not going to have a conversation here about, in open session, about 20 people who apply, because some of these people, I'm willing to bet their employers have no clue they applied for the job here in West Bend. I mean, that is part of the confidentiality process to this. So we either have a choice as a board to stop the search process and we do it as a board, or we continue with these recommendations, we go into closed session, and at that point in time, the committee people, myself, Karen, Brad, would talk about the process where we ended up in the recommendations that we have in the narrowed down spot. That, in my mind, that's the only 2 options that we have here. At that point in time, anybody can disagree with us. That's part of being on a board. I carry no more power on this board than any other member that sits at this table. And if I want to disagree, great. If everybody else says yay, then that's where we go with it. But that's really the only 2 options I see at this point in time.
Well, I'll make an appointment with you then, Brad, to see him. And then, when will we do the second batch of, what is it, 6 or more?
That has not yet been determined.
Pardon me?
That has not yet been determined.
Okay, because the receipt of applications doesn't end until we've hired or chosen a director, right? Okay, so we need to keep in mind that we need to continue to review and accept applications as they come in through this process.
And we are. We are pulling them in as they come in, but we can't do them all at once, Doug. We just
I
can't. We
understand
gotta do
that.
them in parts.
I've done this a few times myself, President, I understand.
I think the one thing to remember, that at some point in this application process, an interview process, we will collect the application. But if we're 2 days from naming a new director and Tim Harder applies for the job, there's very little chance that, barring something happens and we don't move a candidate forward, you don't know, at some point, that initial process and screening, when we get into it, will slow down. Not that you don't look at those applicants, but we have to continue along with the first group, then the second group, and see where we're at. And the board then has to make a decision of where they're going to go forward with that. The committee has no power to say we're down to, we can recommend, but this board would have to accept that and then go from there.
Because, as stated, somebody can send in an application and get it in here the day before.
No,
And
no.
No,
that's what it says when
this
It
is
says until filled.
until filled.
okay, when it's filled, and that's when we select somebody.
But as Tim said, if we are in the process and we've got it down to 4 candidates, and 6 candidates apply, at this point, my recommendation to the board, and we can vote on it, is we go and we do those 4 candidates, put them through the process. If we find somebody, fine. We won't even look at these 6 candidates.
But those
Because you
candidates-
can't keep going, because
Why?
you
Right.
never find an end.
Yeah.
You'd never-
That's what this whole board agreed to.
No, that's
on the
not what we
14th.
agreed to.
No.
Well, it says until filled.
But you're not understanding the process of what until filled means.
So then if I send in an application and you turn it down and you haven't filled the position, then I can technically come after the board.
This was put out there by Kimberly, saying that this is the process
Yes.
they
So
follow.
this is put out by the board. You agreed to it.
We agreed to it, but it was Kimberly from Monarch's recommendation and this Michelle Howie from the city saying we hold open until it's filled. Because in the event we wouldn't have done that, if we have 4 candidates and we don't like all 4, we would then have to put out a new posting.
Yep, each
And
time.
that was to help us not to do that.
Not to mention that if we had a deadline of December 1st, and we had some really good candidates that we knew we really wanted to look at beforehand, we would still have to wait until December 1st, even if nobody else applied. So it's a really time-consuming process, which we don't have.
And I think until filled is becoming the standard norm.
Yes, that's
It is
correct.
becoming the industry norm.
Yeah.
And they don't, if, like Tim said, we're 2 days from making an offer to someone, and we get 6 applicants, we're not going to stop the process with the one that we,
If this is the standard of the industry, who sets that standard? Because I've checked and there aren't a lot of people using that.
I disagree. Education is like that. All the business world is like that. They're all until filled, all of them.
The until filled is just about accepting applications. And what we don't want to do is, and I'm not trying to put words in the mouth of the 2 ladies that were there that day, but what we don't want to get to is a failed search and start over, where we're continuing to collect. So if we get to this whole shebang and we decide that it's Jesse who we want to hire and Jesse is no longer interested, we have a pool of candidates sitting here already applied that we can go back to versus starting from scratch again, delaying the whole process 3 months later. And realistically, that can happen because you can get to that final candidate and find out they're looking at a different position somewhere else and they accepted that one. And so I think that's the real premise of the until filled is that there's always that candidate pool that's available.
And Doug, I also just want to bring up that as a member of the Strategic Planning Committee, we met several times and we never took notes to present to the board. Amy gave a write-up in her director's report about what we talked about and where we were in the process. Same thing with the basement refinishing project. Like, there's been people meeting all the time. Do we get official reports and minutes? No, we don't.
Okay, if you're in the composition of this group, what if someone is missing? Do you have to have like anything like a quorum or anything? Then
You can't.
no.
We're either all there or we're not. Like, we're not going to schedule interviews when somebody's not available, barring the fact somebody's sick or an emergency. But this group is pretty dedicated. We've committed the time. We picked the dates and times that worked for all of our schedules. And it's not 1 or 2 making a decision. It's a consensus that will come here and be explained as to where we made a decision. Or not even a decision, I should say a recommendation, because there is no decision. It's here's where we narrowed down to, these candidates, these were the other candidates.
Okay. Okay,
Okay,
that's it.
thank you. Thank you, Brad, for the update. Library Board President's Report. The only thing that I will say is I have heard that the Monarch system and the libraries in that system are looking at the number of board members, and they're finding that the majority of boards in Washington are, I'll say, understaffed, that Hartford currently has 7 board members. For a library their size, Monarch and ours is saying that you should have possibly 9. So that could mean that this board would also increase based on our side. But Monarch is doing a study. They're working with the state. They're working with the libraries, and they will come back eventually and report to us on that.
Well, aren't we getting 2 new members next year from,
We do not know. I have placed a call to the county, and I have not gotten, the person who was going to contact me was in Washington on business, and I have not gotten.
because
he has
they could
not
be
gotten
actually
back.
putting on 3.
They could probably do 4, based on our on how much money they give us. But
Well, if they give
that's
us
why
more money, they can
I
have
have
another one.
contacted the county and asked how many people they are
Right.
planning. They have not given me an answer. When I get that answer, I will let the board know. Any questions on that? Not much we can say. Old business, Monarch Library System update.
I have none, so I will defer to you or Doug if there's anything that can be said.
Well, we've had quite an interesting last 2 months. It was brought up to the board that the board should consider relocating the central office potentially from Sheboygan because the lease was up in a year. And there had been talk about that even prior to the merger, that there would be a review of the location. Well, that analysis was done by a number of the board members. It was very, very well done. And the result of that was that Kimberly also approached the current landlord, and he offered to reduce the rent and effective next year. So the board decided to go along with that. They're gonna stay in Sheboygan, going to redo the lease with the current owner, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but there's a significant cost reduction going forward for 5 years. In that same vein, Kimberly started an initiative looking at a different ILS, a different concept that's very popular in Europe. The directors requested that we stay with the current ILS, Polaris, but Polaris also reduced their price in the term of their contract. So we've had 2 very nice cost reductions within Monarch that going forward will be reflected in, like, our library, and without costs going up for the next couple of years for either the ILS or the rent on the building. So there's been 2 very good cost reductions efforts that were completed.
Excuse me, Doug, so I'm taking notes here. For the Polaris, that's for 2021, is that yearly or is this like a contract long-term also?
Pardon me?
The Polaris, is that going to be a yearly or is that a long-term?
The building is 5 years.
Yeah, I got that one.
And Polaris, I think, is 5 years.
Okay,
Yeah, I can speak to that, actually. There's a flat rate for 2 years and then a smaller increment for each year after that for 3 years, for a total of 5 years, if I recall.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding Monarch? If not, we'll move on to old business B, the 2021 budget update.
Very simply, the budget passed. The budget that this board passed in October passed on November 9th.
And I just wanted to say thank the city. Jay worked with us, Brad and I, and we appreciate the cooperation that they've given us. So I want to thank the city.
Based on that budget, are we going to have an excess at the end of 2020?
I'll let you know in 21.
Okay. What do you project now?
I project nothing because I really don't know.
Okay.
Okay. Any other budget questions? If not, we will move on to number 10, new business, library board meetings for 2021. You should have all got the calendar. The
Yes.
only change is December 14th, which would move it up because of the Christmas holiday, being that following week when we would have met, because we would have been meeting on the 21st, I think.
Correct, I moved it up 1 week.
So,
So we would need a vote, I believe, on this? Is that correct? No? Just
well,
as is?
yes, we do, because of the December, the board bylaws say the third Tuesday, and because we are having the Christmas one, the second Tuesday, we will need a board, a vote. So may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
May I have a second?
So move.
We have a motion and a second to approve the calendar for 2021 as written. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Just as an aside on this, because now that you've set the dates, I will probably be putting at least the first 3 months of 21 in this facility here, just for the sake of the situation. So at least the first 3 months, and we'll take it from there.
Okay. Okay,
Would it be possible to have the meetings online?
Zoom.
Any kind of platform, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Online. I know other committees are meeting online and they have that flexibility.
Well, what are you saying? Everybody or some or hybrid? How do you mean by that?
Either one, I guess, I would be interested in participating online if it was an available opportunity.
Well, I think the precedent has almost been set by that because we have done it previously. I remember I was sick a number of years ago and I called in, and I also participated in a meeting calling in when I was in Florida one year. Now, I don't know whether we have to change any bylaws or anything like that, because I know
I'm not asking about that, I'm asking, is it possible to do it?
It is possible, and it is possible, like Brad said, maybe a hybrid, where we would have a Zoom. The issue that I've seen with some of the hybrids is if I'm calling in on Zoom and it's on Brad's computer, the Zoom, and we all don't have it, if I'm speaking and it's over there, the person on the Zoom would have problems hearing. But Brad, you said that the Common Council has done some of that? So because we are in the telecommunications facility, we probably could do something like that.
We do this. I just did it. Jesse saw me sit at a board meeting last night at the table, running microphones. I guess the way I look at it is if we're going to do it, we have to have the conversation of it's all or none. Like, are we meeting completely virtual? And I believe there are other city committees that are meeting virtually. This past spring, we did it only by phone, and I would vote against that in any way, shape, or form. I think the visual piece needs to be there for the conversations that we're having. My recommendation is, Brad, maybe talk with John and the crew with Community TV and see what options they've been using, and then we just go from there. And then we just as a board have to decide if we want to move fully virtual or not. But I think it depends upon how John and the city would want to set that up, because I'm assuming they're going to make that backbone work for you guys.
Well, here's the thing, and this is to you, Brett. Has it ever been where the city council, where some have been on Zoom in here and some live? Or has it been all or none?
No, we've had plenty of conversations, especially when the budget talks were going on. You know, some of the department heads were unable to be here, but yet they were online. So we had them on the screens. You know, they participated in the meeting just as if they were here.
So if they are calling in Zoom, we, like, say if Joanne would be
Yep.
calling in,
They
she
can
would be
dial
on
you
the
in.
screen.
You can see them right there on the screens. They can hear you as you're talking. You know, the city, I believe, has that capability.
We do something similar at the district, and so it's actually in our policy. It allows our board members to join virtually for any reason, not just COVID. So I'm traveling for work or whatever else it is, I can join. I don't know exactly what our bylaws said. I know we made a slight amendment last spring with COVID for us here. I think it's just making sure the city can set it up and do it. To me, it doesn't matter if it's hybrid or full. Some boards want it one way or the other, and that's just something we would have to decide.
I just wanted to make it clear, because you had said it's either all or none, and that's what it sounded like, and the hybrid was off the table.
Yeah, I think sometimes those are just conversations boards need to have. So last night we had 2 members join remotely to our school board meeting, one by phone, the call-in option through Google Meet, the other by video. It's just whatever our board prefers for that, just because I know there are some committees that I believe are meeting completely virtually. Every board is different, so I don't want to speak for how we should do it here. It's really up to us.
Why don't you think about it and individually email me with what you think, and then I'll talk with Brad and we'll see. You know, we could set it up as a hybrid, or if everyone would prefer Zoom, that would be fine.
If it becomes an all Zoom, I definitely want to utilize John's group for that, because I do not want to run that on my own machinery at the library. No way.
No, and they would, I'm sure they would do that for us, because when we went the conference call this spring, they handled that. So it would be up to, maybe you could check and see if John's group could handle something like that, if we go Zoom.
You mean an all Zoom?
Just so we know what our options are.
I'm pretty sure he can, because we did it at
Okay.
the school district and fed it to him last spring when we weren't meeting at one point in time.
Okay.
I just think for us as a board, it provide options as we talk about expanding the board and people who travel. You know, pre-COVID, there's times where I may not be here, but I sure would like to join remotely, where I may be, you know, in another district conference or wherever, I can still be engaged. That helps people who may travel or have other commitments to be engaged in public service at that point. So.
Okay. You and I'll talk, and we'll get back, you know, but if anyone has any, you know, email me and let me know. Okay. New business 10B, WBC, West Bend Community Memorial Library Contingency Operation Plan, which was included in our packet. Brad?
Nice long title.
Yeah.
Essentially what we've got here is, you know, and I say this in here, that we've been watching some other libraries, and, you know, they have situations where COVID runs through, and they do various things, such as either shut down, go to curbside, reduced hours, that sort of thing. So it behooved us to take action as an initiative to consider what is our situation and where are we going to be should something like that, you know, befall us. And since from in July, when it was said that the board has to determine reduction of hours, this was born out of that. And what we determined was what the minimal operating staff that we have to handle reference and circulation, we have it set out there, that we can maintain our current plan of hours as we know it. Once falling below that, we would have to consider a change in reduced hours was what we thought was best, because as we know that the board likes the fact that we are open to the public, and so this was the least impactful to the community. What I'm basically looking for is, you know, the ability to do this on the fly, to reduce those hours if something happens, Sunday night, something like that, you know, I get a call and I'm not going to have enough people, that we have to take action right away, because I can't get you guys all together just like that to make a decision. And that's what it came from.
So basically what Brad is saying is Brad, Emily, and Susan, Emily Law and Susan Robbins sat down and came up with the forethought of a plan in the event that the library would be hit with COVID. And this is the plan they've come up with. And now you're asking us to pre-approve so that we do not have to have a special meeting.
I think it's an excellent plan, and I'm 100% for it. You need that flexibility, and it hits you too fast. I'm all for it, and a good job done.
I just want to go on record that Emily and Susan helped me immensely with this, and I give them 100% credit for developing this because it was basically their crews that they made the determination on this.
Brad, what are the staffing levels in those two categories if we're full or at current date? So are we looking at a drop of 1-2 people, just so I guess from my own personal preference, how much kind of a buffer do we have there before we get close to 8?
Are you saying right now or just when we're at full strength?
Right now, with you, I know we may have open positions, so if we're at 12 or whatever in circulation, how many people do we currently have so that we know how close we are? Because, boy, if we're that close already, that drives some other concerns.
Well, we have library staff of 9 right now, and we have circulation staff of 9.
So, if we drop below 3 librarians or 8 Circ, in the event you're saying we have 9 in Circ right now?
Correct.
Okay, would there be the ability for, I think what you're saying in this plan though is, if you went below the 8, we still would have a librarian who may be able to fill in on Circ, is that?
Well, we thought about that. We thought about that. We considered the idea of librarians pitching in during a crunch. However, this would be detrimental to the librarians themselves as they already have tasks, full-time tasks, programming, collection development, as well as the desk shifts that they do. And they are doing those at least half of their working day. So they're already working at their maximum level. As far as I'm concerned, I am not going to push my librarians any further.
Well, I have a question, though. If we're sitting at a staff of 9 in Circ, and the least we can go down to is 8, what if two resigned today or tomorrow? We'd be in a world of hurt, wouldn't we?
It would be a problem.
So I'm kind of along the lines of Deb, and I get it. We have these same conversations by us, and I've done things that aren't my normal job this year, and Jesse has, and everybody, and everybody's dealing with this. I guess that buffer of only having 1 staff on that circulation staff, literally dropping us to different hours, that doesn't take much to happen in COVID world. I've done enough contact tracing to see that and what that can do nowadays. And so that's my only concern with the 8 to the 9 with that 1 person buffer. I think part of it I look at and go, geez, if that's a 2-day deal, Brad, where all of a sudden we expect, Doug's coming back after his quarantine in 2 days, and we got to, fill in for 2 days. Can we keep that staffing level? I just don't want it to be an automatic if we're thinking, now, if we're talking 2 weeks because everybody's quarantined at the same time, that's a different story. And so I know it's very fluid. There's no black and white when you make these decisions sometimes, and that's why it's hard to put a hard number on some of these things, because we don't know if we're talking about a day filling in or 14 days.
So what are you saying?
I guess my question is, we're literally looking, so you're telling me if two circulation staff call in because they're quarantined tomorrow, we close the library down X number of hours a week. I just want to be clear that that's what this plan is stating.
That is what we are looking at.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the plan that staff developed at least for 3 months, and at the end of 3 months, so we can take a look at it again. But I think it's important that it be in place, and for exactly that reason. If we have to lose a person or 2 and it comes on the fly, that needs to have a plan in place to deal with it. I'm sorry about this thing, I keep forgetting the button.
I second your motion.
Any discussion? Brett?
I think the concern I have is it's good to have contingency plans for everything, okay? But I think looking at some of these numbers, I think I hear the questioning in Tim's voice that, maybe the numbers need a little more thought to see where we stand on them. Can we go down to less than this? Or is this the absolute bottom of they can operate under. I think we need a little more conversation or a little more thought before we approve the plan to see if the numbers are actually correct.
Okay, fine. Tell you what, you don't approve this, something happens tomorrow and I cannot fill it in. What do? You're gonna have to tell me what to do.
Brad, I don't disagree with that, and I think kind of where I'm thinking at with this whole thing is, you know, and this comes to the how many times do we go in and out of flexing these hours? You know, it's kind of like in our world for Jesse and I, it's kids in quarantine and staff in quarantine. You know, I've seen school districts do this where they jump in and out of, you know, virtual, hybrid, face-to-face, and for right reasons in some cases. You know, we're going to go 2 days where we're below 8 in that scenario through before. We're going to cut our hours and then we're going to go back to full-time as soon as they come back. That's the part of it that I'm missing. It's maybe not even the 8 circulation staff. It's the length of the quarantines and how long can we survive that I'm looking for. Because I don't want to go Monday, we're now on a reduced schedule to 9 to 6, and on Wednesday we're on our Facebook page saying we're back to 9 to 9. That's the part maybe that's getting me more than even the 8 of how long does this trigger this for? Are we saying when we hit this threshold it's the next 2 weeks, it's a week, it's 3 weeks?
I agree.
And, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I think I can provide some good context here. Press where it says push? Excellent. All right, thank you everyone for letting me participate in your meeting. So to provide context and address what Tim brought up. Yesterday, circulation lost 2 staff. So when we made this plan, we had 11 circulation staff. So that's point 1. Point 2, which is more to your point, is no, if we are going to be under 8 people for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, we are going to tap in to all of our staff resources. So that may mean we do bring a librarian to help out in circulation. That's going to be dependent on who the circulation assistant is that is out, how long that circulation assistant is going to be out. I can only give circulation assistants so many extra hours. So let's say I have 3 circulation assistants that say I'm willing to take extra hours. They can only go up to 1,200 hours in a year. So I'd only be able to add maybe an extra 4 hours for each of these people before benefits kick in, and then that becomes a problem.
Okay, and I think the reason I had the question is we could go down to 8, and we said we're only at 9, but in reality, your staff is normally 11, so you are already down, and that's the issue. So if we would be at a normal staff of 11, that has a flux in there.
When we say normal, Emily, is that they are no longer working for us, or they're in a quarantine situation or something right now?
They resigned.
So we have open positions at that point.
Correct.
So full staff would be 11.
Correct.
Okay. That makes me feel a little better. If we were normally, I'm just sitting here going, how do we get from 9 to 8? And that's we have a staffing issue already before that. So, okay, that explains a lot more. And I like what you said about the idea of it. It's a little bit of that rolling. It's not, oh my God, 1 day and we're going to go down to 9 to 6. This is the ability to make a long-term piece to this and be able to say for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, we are going to these hours and then we'll open back up or something along those lines. That gives a little more context. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and thank you, because like I said, I threw out 2, and I had no idea that you had lost 2 people. It just came to my head. So that makes a big difference, a real big difference. Okay, thank you. Brett, does that kind of answer?
Again, I just wanted to state, we seem to be rushing to a decision again that, we should probably put a little more thought in. And having Emily step up, I think she added a piece that we hadn't heard, so that's good. I'm satisfied.
You know, I can contextualize this a little bit more for you too. If we want to talk about how much loss in traffic we're talking, should we go down to operating Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. until 6 p.m.? Only 10% of our business happens between the hours of 6 and 9 p.m. So even with these reduced hours, we are accommodating the majority of the public. And also pay attention that we did not exclude Saturdays, which are a major day for the folks who can't get in during the regular hours.
I like that.
And I myself wasn't as concerned about the public right now. You know, one of our concerns is our staff. We want to make sure that, just like you at the schools, you know, we want to keep going, but we want to make sure that it's in a safe way for everyone, patrons and staff.
And I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that this plan may not be enough.
Right.
If you get in a bad situation with COVID into your business or wherever else, like there could be other needs. And to your point, Brad, if you literally called me on a Sunday night and said, I'm calling every single board member because we don't have staff tomorrow because of whatever, that's no different than us calling a snow day or a business having a water main break outside of it and they have to close for the day. I think we have that flexibility in here. I like it laid out. I appreciate the context from Emily, and it kind of gives me what I'm looking for to understand that we're not just going to, you know, even to Brett's point, we're not just going to quick flip into this right away. That we're going to look at every other option to try to provide and get us through 2, 3, 4 days first.
Okay, if any other discussion, thank you, Emily, appreciate it. Okay.
I was going to say, I should have just let Emily give the presentation to begin with.
Is there any other discussion? If not, we have a motion by Joanne and a second by Doug to approve the contingency plan as written. All in favor, say aye.
3 months.
For 3 months, okay. For 3 months. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, and thank you for your work. Appreciate getting a proactive process. Thank you. Number 10, new business bylaws. I put this on because we need to have our bylaws updated for a few things. One of them is the possibility that if we needed to have a vote, say something happened, we've got our contingency plan, but something more serious happened where our staff went down, we want to have in the bylaws to say that we'd send out an electronic email and we would have approval via electronic. And I have a committee of Joanne and Doug who are going to be looking at updating the bylaws. And we don't have a date when, you know, you guys work on them. Maybe by January we could have this in place.
Excuse me, I was looking at something. The committee's going to update
The bylaws in regards to electronic approval.
electronic approval, that's what I thought.
Electronic approval.
Deb,
And other things.
Can I ask, so when we talk about other things, does the state, the Monarch system provide us, and again, we live in the world of board policies, where we are provided by one of our professional organizations sample policies and updates. Does Monarch or the state provide any of that so we know we're in compliance with things?
I think DPI, and I haven't checked, but one of the people I've talked to had said DPI was coming out with something, or the state. Have you gotten anything for the schools?
So ours typically, so we react from the law side. So the state will enact a law or a new rule out of DPI. Our professional organizations, or you can buy a service for schools that will say, here's your sample policy for this. So like ours is AWSA, we get example policies of acceptable use with technology to whatever else it is. I just didn't know if there was anything like that with the system where you can literally take our bylaws and start to compare them to recommended languages, things you should have in there, electronic votes, other policies that should go with it. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Joanne and Doug can check with Monarch.
If we're going to do it all, it'd be nice to be able to hit a bunch of big things on there, so.
Yes, yeah. So if there's anything else that, I told Joanne I'd send her the bylaws, and I haven't yet, but I will send out a copy this week of the bylaws to the board, and you can take a look, and if you see anything in there that you think needs updating or maybe looking at, if you would get to Doug or Joanne with your information. Okay. Any questions? If not, our next meeting is December 15th. Tasks?
The only thing I have is that Brad is going to provide an analysis of the Circ numbers compared to patrons to see if circulations are up because of more card holders.
Right, and Brandon and I were going to check about Zoom or
Oh, that's right.
online meetings. Okay, it's 7:30. We are adjourned. Thank you all.